Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
This week we have a Three's Company interview. We've got Joe, not John Ritter, may he rest in peace. No, we've got Joe Keatinge, who's even better, and we've got Ali Bouzari, a culinary scientist, and we've got Wook Clark, all talking about their new Image Comics series, Flavor, out on Wednesday, May 16th. But we got a lot to dig into, so let's dig in.
Hey, real quick, 1 second. Allie, this is going to blow your mind, but you and I walked down the aisle together at Corey and Ethan's wedding.
Oh, holy crap.
Yeah. We were watching one of your TED Talks, and I was like, this guy looks so familiar. And I was like, what the hell? And so I Googled you like a creep. And I was like, wait.
Like the creep you are.
Yeah, the creep I am. Sorry. Yeah, let's just start there. And I was like, no way. And I went on Ethan's page, and I was like, the fuck out of here. So what's up, man?
Sweet.
It's so wild.
That is how I got roped into this thing, was through Corey.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh,
There you go.
well,
Yep.
we're in for a good time then. And also joining us, we've got Joe Keatinge and Ali Bouzari. Their new Image Comics series, Flavor, out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, May 16th. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, so this, you've kind of got this culinary society with Flavor, this kind of like, it's interesting. We were just, talking to co-creator and penciler Wook Clark about the series. There's Asian influence here, there's European influence there, so it's kind of like this very Miyazakian kind of world. How did this kind of collaboration and how did this entire idea kind of like germinate of this culinary society and this kind of like this big contest of champions?
Well, it all starts with like little ideas, right? I think the seed of all this was Image's Corey Hart introducing me to Allie, because she introduced Allie through comics, and one of them was Shudder. And when we met up, and we were just talking, he was talking about food, and we were talking about comics, and I was just like, the way this guy talks about comics, or rather, the way he talks about food reminds me of how Kirby talked about comics, and like the potential of it, and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know, it just kind of got me thinking in the back of my head about, it's that germ of an idea. And like all good ideas, I was walking my dog, and it just the idea of, I'm pretty burnt out personally on violence and everything, much less stuff I write. So I was like, well, if I wanted to do like a competition type of comic, what would you do? I was like, oh man, cooking, like that'd be so much more interesting. So, and then kind of getting into, what food means. I don't know. It just kind of snowballed from there. And I ran the loose idea by some people, I think including Corey, definitely Eric Stevenson, and I think Wook, and I think Allie around the beginning. And everyone seemed to think it wasn't like the worst idea ever, which was kind of cool. So I don't know. And then when it came to, influence and stuff like that, I just think, food can say so much about a culture, and Allie can speak more to this more eloquently about it than I can. So it just seemed natural to have so many different cultural influences for this one book.
Yeah, I mean, Joe may have modestly downplayed the role that Shudder had in my creative life, but I was in the midst of writing my first book about how food worked, and I speak about the science of coming up with food ideas almost exclusively in metaphors. And I was trying to think about how to get all these crazy ideas to jump off of a page, because I'm used to just speaking in front of groups of people and being able to relate and tell stupid anecdotes on the fly. And I was hanging out with Corey, and she just showed me a bunch of different comics. And there was this moment, and I actually have the original ink from Shudder #1 hanging on my wall. There was this moment when I looked at this particular panel, and I was like, oh my God, there is so much nonverbal information being conveyed here. There's like so much packed in here that's not words. This is such an amazing teaching tool. And it completely screwed with something fundamental in the way that I visualize explaining stuff to people. And it was like a paradigm shift moment for me in doing what I do. And so I became Joe's biggest fan. and I made him a bunch of potatoes one day when he was visiting San Francisco to impress him, because I actually did a PhD in potatoes, so I felt like that was my home turf. And he enjoyed the potatoes, and then like a year and a half later, Corey Hart gave me a call and said, "Hey, Joe Keatinge wants to do a comic book about food." And I said, "All right, I'm in." And yeah, it was this thing where I imprinted on Shudder specifically like a baby bird. So a lot of my examples will come from that. But there was this particular panel where there was like a Minotaur in a really dope pinstripe suit sitting on a New York subway car. And it like clearly so much of the world of good comics and the very, very novice amount that I know about it is so much characterization. There's so much potential for that in the way that characters are visually rendered. And we were thinking, if this whole world, this whole feudal, fantastical food world in the book is going to be conveyed through the lens of food, what if we could use food and the way that people cook and interact with the food that they're eating and the kind of food that they're buying and able to afford? It is a really good kind of tea leaves to read about people in real life. So what if we could make that, what if we could find subtle ways to make that come across in a comic? And so from there, all kinds of stuff spun out.
Yeah, I mean, with this, it really is an entire kind of society that is centered around gastronomy. There's like the ingredients kind of have like very big legal ramifications. There's like a commodity there, and there's it almost feels like every cooking style, every dish, every cuisine is its own. When we were talking to Wook Jin, we're big. Am I the only big martial arts fan, or are you guys big?
I enjoy martial arts.
Okay, all right. Well,
no good at it, but I'm enjoying it.
I mean, you don't have to be an active participant. You can spectate. But
I achieved a blue belt in Taekwondo when I was 6. So
nice.
Nice. Brown here,
Humble Brown.
Yeah, a humble brown. I get that.
Humble Brown. Jesus.
The
Humble Brown.
Every cooking style kind of feels like its own martial arts form. And I was wondering, both from a storytelling standpoint for Joe, and then of course from a culinary science, and I do kind of want to dig into what culinary science means in
sure.
But just because it's such a kind of a bleeding edge term. But yeah, how is it kind of... I think I was reading something when this was first announced at Expo. Joe, you were influenced by watching like Chopped Junior or Master Chef Junior, and it was just kind of like how it speaks to culture. But more specifically, what is that kind of cultural cachet, and what is that kind of the idea that everyone's kind of informed by what they or how they cook and what they cook?
Well, the Chopped Junior thing, I believe it was Chopped Junior, is one of those shows, was really actually a huge influence because I didn't normally hadn't watched it, but a friend of mine was watching it, and she was someone who teaches children, and we were watching it for a bit. And she's like, it's interesting because whenever they cut to the kids, they had just been crying 10 seconds before, and she just knows that intuitively, just how kids act and whatever the general look, and it really stuck with me because I had the idea for flavor before. And it was like still in that like brewing mode or the percolating mode or whatever, the simmering mode, whatever you want to use. And thinking about how, these kids are on the show because they just love cooking. They don't have any other thing for it. I mean, they're in it for the pure love of it, but then it's turned into this like program, almost like this gladiatorial sport for the masses of their people, this passion that these children have. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like, what does that do? When the thing you love is taken to this, like, again, this gladiatorial sort of thing. So yeah, no, that was actually like a big moment for me, just thinking about, like what do these kids do the day after they're on the show? Especially like, what do they do the day after the show when they lose? Like, they still cooking? That's interesting.
Kind of has like this traumatizing effect. It's like, I just want to go and get like fucking chicken nuggets, and that's
exactly. Yeah, they just like, fuck, I'm just eating McDonald's. No, worth it.
I can't ever do this
Hungry
again.
Man selection, like, yeah, I don't know.
But Allie, what you're a culinary scientist. You have a PhD. You've given the TED Talks that we've kind of like alluded to and that sort of thing. What is for the uninformed, and certainly, I mean, what is culinary science?
It's a good question. So culinary science is a much cooler form of food science. Food science is super important. It's this field of science that came around like right after World War II, when we industrialized the food system. And it's figuring out how to make food on a massive scale. So what that means is that food science is super unsexy, because it's usually the science of how to make canned tomatoes not kill you. And what's a bummer about that is that this field of food scientists and these very often brilliant but austere and not particularly creative people in the field are usually just chemists and engineers and really, really talented scientists who happen to look at food rather than petroleum. So it's like the greatest creative power, the greatest creative weapon is wielded by these people who have completely uninterested ideas traditionally in food. So the idea of culinary science is my colleagues and I are all we're all day walkers. We're all hybrid chefs and food scientists. And so we take all of that really profound, really useful fundamental knowledge about the physics and chemistry and microbiology of food science, and we weaponize it and we put it into the chef's hands, our own hands in a lot of cases. And so we do everything from consult for 3 Michelin star restaurants and go help some of the best chefs in the world take the next weirdo step with whatever crazy idea they have, all the way from doing stuff like that to working on big volume retail food products, working on sodas and chips and soups and drinks and everything in between, to make it more interesting from a flavor perspective, to pull out a lot of the bad habits of the ingredients that scientists in white lab coats relied on in the 50s, to bring it into a more contemporary setting of the way we eat. And but the culinary science side is that we call it X-ray vision for cooks, where food is just built up of a couple of building blocks. And if you understand how those gears turn inside of a souffle or a turkey sandwich or a Hot Pocket, you can achieve dominion over those things. In the book, I mean, in Flavor, it's been this really fun thing to just feed Joe and Wook and the rest of the team ideas based on, I don't know, like a fundamental quirk in the way that sugars work. Or we've been talking a lot about foragers and why foragers, like a person who wanders around the countryside picking herbs and things, why foragers usually have really amazing palates, because they're used to tasting a single ingredient throughout 6 different stages of growth rather than the same old strawberry at the same old ripeness that you usually get from a store. So we talk about these concepts that are really interesting, and sometimes when you get down on a microscopic level, pseudo magical feeling anyway. And then it's amazing to see what happens when they spin it out and put it into this Miyazakian alternate reality. And the culinary science hopefully forms some of the base rules that they can build on and maybe toss out the window if they want.
So food science is more kind of like reducing botulism, whereas culinary science is like maximizing these kind of spices, the way they combine maximizes their flavor potential or accentuates different things in a cuisine that people might not normally realize on a chemical level.
Yeah, and one of the things that my personal agenda for talking to Joe was I want the protagonist, I want Shu in this comic to have the gift, the secret kung fu of culinary science, where this may be a world where there's a lot of people who are thinking in the straight-laced, almost old school food science or purely culinary way. And this is a world where understanding the creative ability to mix both of those disciplines and understand on a really, really deep, soulful, spiritual level how things can be tasty, and then also have some a little bit more esoteric, intangible understanding of just the way stuff fits together. If you combine those two, exactly, rather than trying to fix botulism, maybe you come up with a bunch of different fun ways to ferment and cure and preserve things that don't just involve sticking it in a can and hammering it with heat until nothing can grow.
Now, I'm not just saying this because you guys are on here talking about flavor, but my favorite Pixar film is Ratatouille.
Well, hell yeah.
Wouldn't it have been hilarious if he was like, I hate that movie?
yeah.
And then clicks.
Everything wrong with the food.
Yeah, it fucks
How
it
dare
all
they
up.
let a rat in the kitchen?
So the greatest moment in my career so far, so I got to do a lot of R&D for the Thomas Keller restaurant group.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
A few years ago. And there would be these moments when we would sit around with Chef Keller and be talking about menu ideas and new concepts and stuff. And he would tell these glory stories of amazing experiences that he had interacting with Hollywood. And so he was one of the consultants on Ratatouille. And he actually voices one of the patrons in the dining room. And actually there was this amazing moment where in all of the different language, all the different dubbed versions of Ratatouille, they had a different baller chef from whatever that language dub over that line. So in the Spanish version, it was Ferran Adria. In the French version, I think it was Alain Ducasse. It's crazy. But anyway, he talked about being in Ratatouille and helping them design what the kitchens looked like. And it was freaking amazing.
That's awesome.
That's pretty damn cool.
So, anyway, I have no idea how that parlays into comics, but there's that.
If we go in the weeds sometimes, it's fine. When Wook Jin was on a moment ago, we went pretty hard on RoboCop.
Well, yeah, he made the mistake of saying like, "Hey, I really like RoboCop," and I was like, "Uh oh, we're gonna be talking about that for an hour, buddy."
Awesome.
You don't happen to like Death Wish too? He's like, "I love Death Wish." Like, now we're talking about all the Charles Bronson movies.
I mean, if you guys have opinions on RoboCop and Death Wish, but
Yeah, I like them.
not well done. Awesome.
Approved.
Yeah, good enough for me.
Except for RoboCop 3, but the
That's my favorite.
there's like a pause, like what if I like RoboCop 3? But the Joe, with both this and Shudder, you've kind of got these like fantasy worlds where like there, you know, Ali was mentioning like there's the Minotaur and stuff, and you know there's there's the robotic, everyone's favorite alarm cat in Shudder, and in Flavor we're seeing, at least in the first issue, it's not as heavy just yet, but there are certainly fantasy elements, and people just kind of like walk around. I mean, it makes sense because it would be no big thing for them because they live there. But what is it about that kind of like, hey, there just happens to be giant dog people, and we're kind of cool with it? Is that kind of like would that come from like a manga background, or like what is it about that kind of those kind of stories and those kind of environments that you kind of enjoy crafting?
Well, I just like, not so much manga in particular, but like comics with, manga under that umbrella. Like, I don't know. I think as the readership has gotten older, and luckily now it's starting to skew younger, I think people started worrying about the stupidest stuff. Like, how does the Batmobile stay, like, I don't know, whatever, in shape or what? Who's the mechanic on it? Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, one of my favorite comics of all time are these old Captain Marvel Adventures books from the 40s, and it was C.C. Beck and Arnold Bender especially. And there's a lot of stuff where it's like, well, where does Taki Tani come from? And initially it was like, I was a tiger, I read a book. Like, that was it. That's how I learned to stand upright or whatever. And, it's like, that's not the stuff that's, or you watch like Star Wars, right? It's like, oh, why does Han Solo and Chewbacca talk? Well, who cares? It's not the important part of it, that the important part about it are their characters themselves and what they're going through and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like a lot of comics get ashamed of, the stuff you can just do, and like they just kind of limit themselves. And so, I don't know, I refer to this a lot, but the best advice I ever got about comics was just write what you want to read. And I want to read comics where you can just have those tall dog people for no good reason. You know what I mean? Like, have some sort of reason for it. But, like, it's just there because it's a comic book. You know what I mean? Or, like, in, Flavor, the shoe has her dog Buster, and it's like they know how to communicate I'll argue Buster is entirely based off my own dog, and I think we communicate pretty well. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the most fantastical example to bring up.
Well, I mean,
But-
you mentioned Star Wars. Chewbacca is based off of George Lucas's dog Indiana.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah, and the namesake
Named
for
the
Indiana
dog
Jones.
Indiana.
But I like in the more fantastical parts about comics, or like, we're seeing comics that kids make. They're not worried about like, oh, what does this make sense for this character be doing this, or like they just draw the thing they just think is coolest. And not granted, you can't just get away with that, this point. But just that idea of like, okay, we'll just why is there a dog person? Because there's dog people. Like,
Well, that's
fun.
true. That's true because, like, there's certain characters where, like, that realism we see in movies now. The Christopher Nolan Batman movies were so, and that works for more for a Batman. Even though, like you said, like we don't need to see the mechanic working on the Batmobile, but like they
see
all.
Michael Keaton work on the Batmobile.
That's true. That's true. He's a smart man. But the like with Man of Steel, for example, like remember they were like, oh, it's so. Yeah, I hear you. But like, they were like, oh, it's the grounded Superman. And it's like, dude, as soon as he flies and shoots heat vision from his eyes, all that is gone. Like it's all about the fun of Superman. We don't
He's
even know.
literally not grounded
yes,
as soon
thank
as
you.
he starts flying.
Thank you, Chris. That's here. Yeah. But like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think.
Yeah, that movie's horrible. I hate it so much. When I saw it with a friend of mine, and right when it finished, I just said, "What the fuck?" like out loud. I couldn't believe it. But it's like it's not making it more realistic. They think it is, but what they're really doing is they're being apologists. They're like, "Oh, we know superheroes are real dumb, but bear with us. We're gonna make it more grown up." And it's like, no, you're not. You're just making it stupid. It's like you can argue that the most adult Superman comic that's out there is probably like All-Star Superman. It's just because it's a smart book with a bunch of weird shit happening, But,
with the realism thing though, I'm like, not to scientist explain, but like what Joe and I have talked about this a fair bit, but like one of the things that I find most compelling about like Michael Crichton books, for instance, or Jurassic Park in general, if you want to talk about like a movie adaptation, is like, all right, so there's a lot of stuff that the geneticist version of Neil deGrasse Tyson would probably see that and go on Twitter and be like, well, #actually, blah, 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 blah. but the cool thing about that, or the cool thing about like another Christopher, like Interstellar, is, yeah, they brought on these people, these consultants. In Crichton's case, he did like a ton of research into where this field was, where it was going, just so that you could at least have the aura of getting it right.
Right.
It's like close to the Bruce Lee know the rules, master the rules, and then you can break them. It's like nobody's gonna
That's
make
exactly it.
nobody's gonna make like Inception was never gonna make sense on a level of Freudian psychology, and it was never gonna be truly realistic. But there's a level of, I don't know, maybe it's like intricacy that you can achieve when you understand the base way that all these puzzle pieces fit together, and then you can start to mess around with it again. Like I've used that word before, but like with better dominion. And that was the idea here. Like when we're talking about food and making it fantastical, like I wasn't looking at the inks that Wook Jin did and was like, well, actually, I don't know if Shu would hold a knife like that, or those things were immaterial. We're not talking about like making the technique believable. I mean, apart from like the crepes should be a batter and not a dough. But what we wanted to do was create this interconnected sense of like a dream logic for food, where it's like, here's some general guidelines that you can build on, so it doesn't feel slapdash. It feels like a living, breathing, convincing world. It feels like a conversation that you walked in on in the middle of it, rather than like what it felt like, I don't know, watching the seasons 3 through 6 of Lost, where it's like, oh, these guys are just making it up as they go.
Right. No, that's exactly it. You need to have, I believe you need to have the research there, like you were saying, so you know what to screw with. You know what I mean? Or you know what to mess with. You need to have that element of, like, even on something like Shudder, which is extremely fantastic. I did so much freaking research on that book in terms of like cultures and and how would this work and how would that work? So, but it's like, how does a space dog work? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like you learn as much as you can, and then you fake the rest.
Sure. Right. But the idea isn't to nail it, right? It's not to say like, this is a grounded Superman. We want to create a completely, it's like the Human Centipede 2 poster that said 100% medically accurate in parentheses. Like, you don't want to make 100% Neil deGrasse Tyson compatible science fiction because, like, A, it's probably impossible, and B, it would be boring.
Mm-hmm. Neil deGrasse, I'm just imagining Neil deGrasse Tyson watching the Human Centipede 2
it's
now.
Perfect. I have no problems with this film. That would be nuts.
They would put it on the DVD cover.
Oh, he would be all over that cover. Yeah, thumbs up.
2 thumbs up from Neil deGrasse Tyson.
It's that picture of him doing the we got a badass over here, but instead of open hands, it's thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
One of my favorite Neil deGrasse Tyson jokes, but it's not. It's a joke at his expense, of course. Is like someone's like Neil deGrasse Tyson watching Toy Story. Toys don't do that.
Oh man. That's hilarious.
We love you, Neil.
Yeah, no. Ali, I'm glad you mentioned Inception because I took my I saw that movie in theaters. I was like, this is the fucking masterpiece. I love this movie. And then I took my mom and my dad to see it, and we got out of the theater. And my mom, speaking of like reality and stuff, and suspension of disbelief, she's like, "So how did they get in their head? Were they walking around?" I was like, "What a living hell that movie must have been for you if that was your thought 5 minutes into it." Because I was like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry I took you to see that movie." But that's like you were saying, like it's important to like, you have those set of rules, but you also, you got to let Superman fly, and have fun.
It's the Paddington. We were talking shitty movies. Paddington 2 is one of my favorite movies.
Great.
And nobody blinks an eye that there's a bear that goes around wearing a rain jacket.
That's the great thing about that movie. Like he's walking around, they're like, yeah, of course, of course there's a talking bear.
Yeah, of course he's my barber today.
Yeah,
of course. Just make it snappy, a little off the top.
Yeah, you guys sold me. Like bears giving haircuts, I'm in.
Oh, dude, it's available on like
he's queuing up like Netflix right now to see if it's available.
It's not on. The first one's on Netflix.
The first one's on Netflix, yeah.
But Paddington 2 you can get on digital HD.
Yeah,
I wish there are a melange of streaming platforms available these days.
That's true.
Yes,
that's true. This is true.
So
sorry to kill the flow.
No, it's quite fine. Quite fine. We should get sponsored by Paddington 2.
I would, yeah.
And how much you guys
just
have
in
talked
time
about it.
for the release of Paddington 2.
And RoboCop. Please come.
Yeah, for 1987's RoboCop.
Yeah, please come back.
But
the
new double extended edition.
Yeah, the Criterion collection.
Yeah. 2 more seconds of squibs exploding.
So, Joe, if with Shudder you were kind of like doing this postmodern deconstruction of storytelling at large, and while writing a love letter to it at the same time, what are you really doing? What are some of the, without giving the game away, some of the overarching themes? This is where I put on my brainy glasses with Flavor.
Well, I think it's really, and I think I learned this on Shudder. It's really, you can go in with intent, but until you're done, you don't really see it. And I think people who worry too much about theme when they're getting into something, that can sometimes damage their storytelling in favor of what they think they need to be doing or what the theme really is. I remember I read this interview with Tarantino where he was talking about how on Reservoir Dogs he was at the Sundance Institute, and someone there was like, "Oh, hey, have you done your subtext work?" And he was like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And they explained, basically you go over your thing and see what the subtext is and da-da-da. And he did it, and he liked it, and he was like, "I'm never doing this again." Because I think it just, it kind of kills it. There's stuff you go on, with the intent, for instance, on Flavor, part by the intent is kind of thinking about, when the things you love are taken in by a larger system, I guess you could call it. What does that do for the thing that you're passionate about? And I also think I don't know, I was also reading this David Lynch interview where he was talking about how talking is horrible and how he's just once you say something about a work, that forever changes the way that person will view the work. So I think I'm learning to just shut up a little bit more when it comes to that kind of thing, because like it just comes with food. Like if you have three friends who go to the same restaurant, they might get three different reactions to the same exact food just based off their own backgrounds, or their own history, or their own whatever. But so I think that's a better question to ask me when it's done. And even then, I don't know. I think maybe it's something I should just shut up about a bit more. I was thinking about this like yesterday, just about stuff in general.
Takes away the mystique a bit.
Yeah, just like just enjoy this thing, or let it be your own thing, or like another. I don't know why I'm citing him twice, but another Tarantino example was in Reservoir Dogs. One of the characters, Aldo Rain, has a rope burn, and Charlie Rose. Well, that's not a good example to bring up, but Charlie Rose was asking him, why does he have a neck burn? Why didn't you ever explain that? He says, because it's their own movie. When they go in and they watch it, they make up their own reasons. I could tell you what my reason is, but if anyone comes up with their own reason, then it's more interesting that way, because like you have to interact with it. So yeah, I don't know. I that's a long-winded way of ultimately evading the question.
It's a very polite, well thought out way. Well, to invoke Tarantino a third time, and hopefully he'll appear like Beetlejuice. He hasn't yet, damn it. But the one of my favorite examples, kind of speaking to that, is he had read an interview about the making of the Guns of Navarone, and Gregory Peck went up to the director, and he's like, it just like near the end of filming, he's like, oh, this entire movie is a love story. The beginning of the movie, it's me and Anthony Quayle, and over the course of the film, it's me and falling for David Niven. And the director just kind of looked at him and was like, no, man, it's about a bunch of guys that like are trying to blow up a Nazi cannon. But like, there's kind of...
Well, it's funny. I remember when I was actually one of the first examples of this I had was in high school. I got in a big argument with the English teacher because she was saying that Baum intended with Wizard of Oz for like the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion to represent different titans of industry, and I don't know, blah 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 blah. And I was like, nah, that's bullshit. I think it's just like, I didn't say bullshit, but I was like, I think it's just a lion, a scarecrow, and a Tin Man, and like this is the cool shit that happens in this world. Like, fucking who cares? Yeah. And I don't know. I think there is a lot to that, but if that's her take, I guess that's valid. But sometimes it's just a Tin Man.
Yeah. Sometimes a thing is just a. It's not thing. There's something. There's an actual tangible object. Is just a.
Wait, Nietzsche talking about a pipe is just a pipe?
Yes, they're good old Fred. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. Coming from the PhD man. Well done.
Science
well, like
for three.
Chewie in this cartoon. Ali's like, oh yes, no Nietzsche.
Best I got is
I only know that because that was a poster on my roommate's wall in our dorm.
It just burned into your memory for forever.
It was literal dorm room philosophy. So it's not that deep.
I wish I had the roommate with something original. My dude just had Pulp Fiction and Animal House, which I feel like is just like
the Animal House, but
yeah. Well, just both is just like the most cliche thing.
I had a Rocky poster.
Which one?
Solid.
Yeah, it was just him at the top of the stairs. Like, but it was like the far away shot.
Rocky one,
the first Rocky, the first Rocky.
Well.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I love all the Rocky movies, but the first one's my favorite movie of all time. So, like, yeah, him standing on top of the steps, his whole life is a 1 in a million shot. One night I was sleeping, and I heard this like rustling noise because it was right above the head post. It somehow came.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, Stallone like, yeah, I want my poster back. I'm here to collect the Tooth Fairy, but with Rocky posters. No, but like the poster somehow came unhinged from the top of my bed, and it slowly, like a ghost, fell on top of me, and I woke up, and it was the scariest fucking thing in the world. Because it was just like
Stallone coming in for the hug.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I heard you had a bad math test there, Jake. Let me give you a hug. So like,
got your million to one shot right
here. Million to one shot. Yeah. So that's my college poster story.
Spot on.
So something we ask everybody that comes on the show: what are you guys currently geeking out over?
Talking about streaming services. I just got into one called Brown Sugar that has a ton of like Pam Grier and Richard Roundtree movies, and from the 60s and 70s. I have to say, it's the fucking coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's only $3.99 a month. It's a cost of one comic, but you can watch all these movies. Like I was watching Sheba Baby, Pam Grier the other night. I think I'm gonna watch Cooley High later. I don't know. Do you
have a favorite blaxploitation film? Because I am a proponent, and I'm not just saying this to say this, because everyone's like, "Oh, that's kind of iffy." But the third Shaft film, Shaft in Africa, is as a staple for me.
To pick one's really hard because I just think Pam Grier is like one of the greatest actors we've ever seen in our lifetime. So maybe Coffee if I had to pick one, but I would have changed my answer in like 10 minutes.
Over Foxy
something
Brown.
with Pam Grier starring in it is ultimately.
Nice.
I'm gonna go one layer deeper into the like geek id and ego. When Joe, I don't know if I told you this, when I first saw, I think the first color pages from issue 1. Did you guys ever read the Redwall books? Brian Shaw?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
I read the first one. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, so I have an old copy of Madame Mayo, which was my favorite one of those. The reason that it like brought me back there was, yeah, sure, talking animals and stuff, but the food in those books may have been one of the subliminal reasons why I started cooking.
Oh, whoa.
Like,
they always go into super detail, yeah.
Oh my God, it's like meadow cream. Like how delicious is that sounding? What is that? But that was the hook for me. Was that it was this swashbuckling adventure of various farmland critters, but like they had really dope picnics. So I have been rereading the Redwall books.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting that you picked Matty Mayo because that's like the darkest of all of them.
It's the empire of Redwall, but
like people or I guess not people, but like beloved characters from the first book like go out horribly, all so they can just rescue his kid. But
then there's also like gratuitous like softcore toast porn in the middle of it when they're like sitting around a campfire, which I'm into.
I remember like always like they would always be talking about like drinking like cordials, like elderberry cordials or like strawberry cordials.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, as like a Korean Irish kid that grew up in like Virginia, I was just like, what is that?
But isn't it a delicious word?
Yeah, cordial.
You know which one really got me was in the Narnia books when they're talking about Turkish delight all the goddamn time.
Oh, which is such false advertising.
Because you have it in real life, and you're like, oh, this is the grossest thing ever.
Yeah.
What was wrong?
Do you know what is delightful is Turkish delight in Turkey? It's like it is it's like walking into a Swarovski store in the mall. Like they have them all stacked up all over the place, and they're in all kinds of different colors, and they're covered in everything from like rock sugar to rose petals. It's Turkish delight in its homeland. It's like Corona in Mexico. Like everywhere else is kind of like, this is a dumb idea, but there it really, really.
Now, in Turkey, do they just call it delight?
They call it lohum. So
makes more sense.
Slightly, yeah. Okay.
Good job, Chris.
Well, I just
no. I mean,
a little Pulp Fiction action.
Yeah,
very good, very good.
Here's
they
one.
They call it lay delight.
Royale delight.
Delight with cheese. It's like, oh, they really did change up the flavor here, didn't they? This is what we were missing all along, gentlemen. It's kind of like
because they have the metric system.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like, God, Turkish delights. There is nothing delightful. It's like fruitcake. There's no easy way out.
Rocky 3?
4?
4.
Robert
Rocky
Tepper.
4. Sorry.
Yeah. The Apollo Creed death montage.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers.
Yeah.
For the
Is that the one with the robot?
Yeah, it's also the one with the robot. Yeah. The one last question, just because I feel with this book and your background, Allie, this is apropos. What is your go-to comfort foods?
Joe, I'll let you go first.
Dim sum, just in general. The whole array of dim sum. I think if I had to
just food on carts
food on
at
carts.
high velocity.
At high velocity, yeah.
The higher the velocity, the better.
Or bow's a big one, or I don't know, dumplings, all that kind of shit. Like I just that's my go-to.
Well, that's kind of weird because, like, now that you're mentioning it, and Allie, maybe you can speak more to this. Every culture has their variation on like dough stuffed with something or dough wrapped around something. And I guess, is it just because it was, like, easy? Because we're, like, the only species on this planet that, like, prepares its food before it consumes it. Is it just, like, it's easy to make dough, you can use it to wrap fucking anything. Everybody has their own version of dumplings.
So we'll go down the rabbit hole for, like, 30 seconds. So
I love it.
Coming. In every culture on the planet, this would be my rationalization of it. So starch is the thing that unites all dumplings. The reason that you find starch everywhere is because starch is what every plant that you could silo for the winter or for the dry season or whatever, that is how those plants store energy. A side effect of them storing that energy is in order for them to come up with like a stable source of something they could feed on, they coil these chains of sugars, which is all starches. It's just like a pearl necklace where each pearl is a sugar. They coil these chains of sugars into tight little balls, and they store them in the tubers of a potato, or they store them in the grains of a piece of rice or whatever it is. Starch, those same chains, that one universal trick that plants do, all of those things are sticky when they come into contact with water. And because they're sticky, you can knit them together in these big webby things that then becomes dough. And you can either eat that dough by itself, only starch is super bland. So I think everybody just figured out, hey, here's a thing that I can turn into a webby net. What if I stuffed it with something that I actually wanted to eat? So then I could combine like whatever tiny bits of food are available right now at this time of year with like my insurance policy of piggybacking off plants figuring out how to save up for their winter by saving up for our winter. Yeah.
Okay.
So my favorite food. This is like directly because I grew up in a Texan/Iranian household. Is one of the things we would have would be either like whatever super sugary, horrible cereal was the thing at the moment. Like Rice Krispies Treats cereal was my thing for a while. We would either have that for breakfast, or we would have this one specific type of Persian bread called Bouzari, which is like bread slapped on the inside of a oven dug into the ground, kind of like a tandoor. You like slap this bread on the inside of this oven. It gets covered in sesame seeds. They get like super toasty and delicious. And it's kind of like a lightly leavened flatbread. And so we'd have that with really, really salty feta cheese. And it's just like bread and cheese. And I've actually had multiple recurring nightmares where something's going to happen and I know I'm going to die. And in the dream, I choose to eat that as my last meal.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So there's that.
What would I eat for my last meal? I wish I could say something like fucking like kalbi or something, or like a nice dwaji bulgogi, but honestly, it would probably I'm going back to chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets.
That's what happens when you're on Chop Junior.
Yeah. You know what? Since we got the food scientist here, what is it about chicken nuggets that make them so amazing?
They are not chicken. Number one.
Like I don't know. The FDA put the clamps down, man. Most stuff has to be chicken now.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it not the like pink goop that they?
Yeah, like anything that you read on Upworthy that's like a listicle about how some food's going to kill you, it should be thrown directly into the garbage. Like, it's not that serious. Like, if half the stuff you eat is a superfood that'll make you live forever, and half the stuff you eat is going to give you cancer, like right now, eat a little bit of everything, and you'll live to be like 75.
Yeah, there you go.
But so why are chicken nuggets so delicious?
Yeah.
It's so one of the things about like cooking with animals is that you're cooking the animal's muscle. So the way that animal is raised is directly going to impact like the deliciousness. It's going to impact how the muscle fibers are aligned, and therefore how chewy it is. It's going to affect how much sugar and salt and like savory compounds are stored up in it. So basically how much it's seasoned itself during its life. And so when you're cooking like whole muscle, when you're cooking a scallop or a steak or a whole chicken breast, you have to do the matchmaking of making sure that you're finding the perfect the perfect gift of nature and then cooking and eating it. With things like burgers, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, since they're composites, since they're meat that's then ground up, and during the grinding process you can add spices and seasonings, and you can add stuff directly into the interior and mix it all together. It's kind of like a culinary act of God, where you can weight the deck in your favor, and you can say, nah, I want every bite to be perfectly salty. I want every bite to be completely tender, because it's all ground up and there's no muscle fibers that I have to deal with and whatever. I think that's it. And that's why we love meatballs. It's why we love chicken nuggets. It's why we love like the filling in like shumai and all kinds of dumplings, is because we've ground it up and taken it back onto our own turf, rather than being like, oh man, the cow was super pissed off the day it was killed, and so this steak isn't as good as the next one.
All right. Sounds good.
This has been, without a doubt, the most informative podcast we've ever had.
Oh God! and
you guys kept teeing him up, so I just had to.
To that
That's why I
point,
love talking with this guy, though. It's like I knew what to do in a food comic. I had to have him on board, you know. Because I would say it's like the way Kirby would talk about like Fourth World. Why do you have? I mean, there's an interview with him where he's like, why would gods and angels look like they always do, and like, you know, old paintings, they should look like Orion essentially, you know. And it's like this manner of thinking that was so far removed away from everyone else was thinking. And I just think, like, I don't know, when Allie ever talks about food, whether it's chicken nuggets or whatever, it's just like the most fascinating. I don't know. I just think it's amazing.
you know, and
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It has been super informative. And, you know, to that point, Jake, I think you forgot, we did an episode with the Science Channel, and this still trumps that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we didn't talk about chicken nuggets on that one.
We did not talk about chicken nuggets.
Yeah,
we
they
talked
didn't
about
bring their A game.
Yeah. Dark matter.
Yeah. Human Centipede 2. Rocky posters.
Data flows. Fuck
Yeah.
that. But yeah, so anything you guys want to plug, you know, before we return you, you know, to your whatever parts of town.
Parts unknown.
Allie's book Ingredient, I think, is, I mean, seriously, like it's kind of become, I have like a shelf of reference stuff for this book, and that's like the one I go to the most, regardless of Allie being the consultant on it. So I'd recommend that.
All right, so we're going to do this. So I would recommend Joe's book Glory, which was the first comic book to ever make me cry.
Oh, really? Sorry, man.
Yeah. No, it was great because they were very heavy metal tears. So that was awesome. I love that book.
And then chicken nuggets, wherever you can get those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Paddington.
Shout out to Chicken Nuggets.
Shout out to chicken nuggets.
Shout out to Paddington 2.
Also-
Available in home
also-
video.
Yeah,
Also,
Paddington 2 now on Blu-ray. Digital download.
One self plug. Next week and the week after, I'm going to be starting a very strange food column for the San Francisco Chronicle. That, because of the corruption that has been inflicted upon me by people like Joe, will be super illustrated, which is fun.
Nice.
Right
And
on.
then-
That's all.
Joe, don't you have Stellar coming out soon?
Oh, yeah, I've got some other comics. Yeah, I'm doing Stellar, which is like a Robert Kirkman, Mark Silvestri book that Brett Blevins and I are doing together, which is wicked cool. Brett Blevins, you guys don't know, like he did a comic called Sleepwalker back in the 90s that was really formative on both Robert and me. And so when Robert asked me to do this book, I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And he was like, I'm going to get Brett Blevins to draw it. And I was like, holy shit. So that's actually, and in a weird way, like, it's sort of like a spiritual bookend kind of, not like story sequel to Glory, but definitely thematic sequel to it. And I don't know. You have to read it to find out why.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. I'm always just kind of doing new stuff. I mean, Image and Skybound have been a pretty great home, so I'm kind of kicking around there for, as long as they'll have me.
Yeah.
But I guess if you just go to, I don't know, I'm back on social media, so go on Joe Keatinge at Twitter or Instagram or MySpace, whatever. I don't know what the hell I got. Twitter and Instagram, I guess, are the main ones. Tumblr.
Yeah. I don't have quite the story that Jake has with Allie, but, getting to interview you and Lila for Image Plus for Shudder was one of my, the highlights writing for that magazine.
Oh.
And then you and I both did that translation of Beowulf that came out last year.
That was so cool. That was rad. That was a fun one.
Yeah. So check that, and that's about to get a paperback edition too.
Oh, is it? I didn't even know that.
They kind of like announced it and then like brushed that one under the carpet. But apparently it's coming in the next like month or so. There's going to be a paperback because they sold out at the distributor level, at the Diamond level for the hardcovers.
Oh no, did they really? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
well, Sam, we keep getting put together, so we should just work on something methodically next time.
You got the email, dude.
Yeah, right on.
But so again, May 16th, out in comic book stores or Comixology if you're more digitally inclined, just like Paddington 2, you can get that first issue of Flavor. Guys, thanks again for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you. It was a ton of fun.
And joining us on the show this week, we have Wook Jin Clark. He's the artist and co-creator of Flavor, out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, May 16th. You can also see his work with, the Adventure Time comic book and the regular show comic book. Wook, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, with this, we had mentioned the stuff you had done with Boom and the regular show and all that, but with this, you're kind of employing a much more, it kind of hews closer to manga, and there's like the entire idea of this fantasy world strikes me as very kind of Miyazakian. So were those kind of influences when you were kind of crafting this world with Joe?
I think to a certain extent, yes. I know, visually I just grew up on cartoons, so that was a huge influences. But mostly in terms of like that kind of stuff, it's more, and I've talked about this with Joe, where it's just like, it's more the slower storytelling that we really like about those films, and kind of like the slower pace, the ease in, being able to breathe it in the world, not rushing to like do a bunch of exposition, and it's more like, here's a character, you get to walk through their day and then kind of see what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, and you've got this entire like fictional fantasy world that it's a walled city. It's of kind of like there's certainly like Asian influence, and you see that with some of the names and that. But it could be very just as easily pass as European, like a lot of like say Castle in the Sky or Kiki's Delivery Service and that sort of thing. So, in terms of designing this world from the ground up, how has that been? And how extensive in creating the world of Flavor.
It's been, I don't know, it's been fun overall. Joe and I have been kind of toying with this idea for a little while, and I kind of just love buying different, this sounds kind of weird, but like, those like interior homes magazines, you just see people's houses or like work studios, and it's like, I draw a lot from those, I draw a lot from like friends' studios, and then just kind of like, try to incorporate different, some aspects of different architecture in different parts of the world, and just trying to like mesh it together in a little bit of a melting pot.
And of course, with speaking of melting pots, this is all revolving around. It's a culinary society. Everybody kind of cooks, and there's kind of this almost it was kind of billed as Hunger Games without the hunger aspect and that sort of thing. How has it been trying to kind of? I'm trying to remember what anime it is. but there's an anime, one of my favorite animes, which is so good I can't remember the name of it.
Happens all the time.
That's how you know it's quality.
Yeah. There's an anime where like the big thing is they play mahjong. So every time they put down a tile, it's like a fucking bomb goes off. It's like a Dragon Ball Z special move. Like there's the dramatic music and everyone like has the reaction with like the action lines and everything. How is it how has it been making the aspect of cooking so dynamic and high stakes?
It's fun. It's different. Like I am not a great cook myself. So it's a nice challenge to try and like do that research, draw from different things and like how people cook certain ways or what foods combine with what. And honestly, it's just like I feel like with each project that I've been doing lately, it's doing something new and getting me out of my comfort zone and hopefully growing and learning more. Because I want to be the most well-rounded cartoonist and storyteller that I can be. And it's like I've never drawn food that much. So it's just kind of fun and different.
Yeah. With the is there any kind of this is kind of a softball vanilla question that I'm sure you've probably gotten working this press circle, but is there any kind of like cuisine in general? Because again, just like this is an all-worldly location, I feel like we're going to see. I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be like an Enter the Dragon situation where it's like or Dragon Ball situation where it's like a tournament and everybody has their own like this is my like super non that will like knock your fucking socks off, or this is my ultimate borscht, you know? But like, how has it been kind of like referencing food as a non cook yourself?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head where there is a tournament and everyone has their like specialty dish. And like you said, you know, Dragon Ball super moves and it's like, I've got a crepe Suzette. And then it's like sprinkling orange zest on it or something. Not maybe as cartoony as that, but yeah, I mean, everyone will have like certain dishes that is like distinct to them. And yeah, it's me learning as I go because half the time I'm like, oh, I don't know what that is. So and I'm like, oh, because that's why it takes, you know, an hour to make, and I'm too lazy to cook for an hour. That sounds terrible.
So there's no part of the book where a contestant asks the audience to give them their energy.
If there is, Joe hasn't written that part yet.
Well, that's how. Well, I was about to say, how else are you going to beat Frieza? It doesn't actually beat Frieza, does it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Like so
it
much,
just, like
yeah,
destroys the planet. Actually, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like it's Frieza that blows up the planet, but like it certainly like warps the fucking like whatever plate they're on. And what pisses me off about that, like here we are, like 20 years later, like that was just building that spirit bomb was like a week and a half of Toonami.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that takes me back. I think I was 14 or 13 when all that was going on, and just coming home from school and be like, yeah, today's the day, you know, it's gonna happen. And then be like, you know, the days go on and I'm like, okay, it's Wednesday, come on. And then Friday, you know, you still go home and turn it on and it's like nothing's happened still, and you have to wait another like past the weekend for hopefully the finale, and I was like, this sucks.
But we still keep watching because we don't know.
And then another week goes by and all the translation that they've done so far is done, so they start over at the beginning of the fucking series.
Yeah.
You have to watch
We're very familiar.
The Saiyan saga over and over again.
Very familiar with Raditz.
Well, dude, I don't know how old y'all are, but like there was that time period I remember like I grew up and it was just on UPN and I would just see random episodes and they would never go in order. Oof. So it would be very confusing to be like, okay, wait, they were just fighting Raditz and now they're on Namek.
Just like hopscotch. So
yeah,
you know, Wookjin, you've listened to our fine program before and still agreed to come on, so kudos. As you may be familiar, I've asked this of multiple contestants. What is your favorite fight in all of Dragon Ball? So that could be Dragon Ball Z, GT if you really wanted. Super. What's your favorite
Kai.
fight? Yeah. Well, Kai's
Yeah,
Z.
it's Z.
Yeah. Or
The movies.
yeah, the movies certainly. Those are actually pretty fucking good. Some of
I
them.
always forget about the movies. Yeah, now that you say the movies, though, there were some good ones. I can't remember which movie it was. It was maybe like, it wasn't Tree of Might, but it was the one where there's like the Spice Boys. Do you remember that?
Dead Zone.
Yeah, the Dead Zone. I don't know why, but for some reason, like, you know, it had they showed the clip on like the Toonami commercial of the guy like twisting the knife over his back and like running.
Dude,
I don't know. I like that one a lot.
when you get the chance, like after you've had your way with us, go on YouTube and look up like Toonami DBZ promo or intros. The intros were the best. Not the promos were fine too, but the intros were where it's fucking at because they set it to like not like house music and everything, and it was just like, oh my god, this is and it was like a sizzle reel, and it made it look like even the shittiest things, like the Garlic Jr. saga, you were still like, oh well,
yeah.
this isn't that bad.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. Oh yeah.
That was the hard one, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's the same way with y'all. Maybe I don't know, but like when Vegeta's voice changed, I was like, what's happening? What's going on?
Yeah, the idea that
I
they
don't like
changed
this.
production houses like midstream.
Well, and I'm such a dummy, or I was growing up, where I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, I was huge into Power Rangers as a kid, and I remember like not understanding. I didn't know that it was a Japanese show before, and then like when we went, I went with my mom to go see the movie when I was like 10 or 11. I was like, why do the Zords and their outfits look all fucking weird? And then Rita's not, you know, the same woman, and she's like, you idiot. It's a pre-taped show from like years before. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense now.
All about that Super Sentai life.
I will say, I have a friend who is like a Super Sentai like historian, basically, self-proclaimed, I'm sure. But
Yeah, we never asked for his credentials.
But I did ask him about like the suits one day, and he was like, you know, that's a weird thing with like the suits in the movie because they filmed certain shots for the TV show in the original Sentai suits. Like they had access to the actual suits. They just made new suits for the movie for like branding purposes and like so they could make more toys.
Yep.
It's like,
oh yeah,
that's why they randomly had the medallions on the chest, even though they never had that in the TV show.
Yeah, that was a weird movie.
Yep, I own it on Laserdisc.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Wait, what? They made a Laserdisc?
Oh yeah.
What?
They have both the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie and Turbo a Power Rangers movie on Laserdisc.
Real quick, I want to go off on a tangent with the Turbo. Like,
go for it.
I remember as a kid, and even as an adult, I was like, you know, it's cool. You become a Power Ranger and you get like a dinosaur or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought of like, oh, I get a truck, and that truck combines with like a minivan to turn into a robot seemed really bad. I guess I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. No, I never cared for Turbo. In fact, I still to this day haven't even watched the whole movie. That was about the time that I fell off of the Power Rangers bandwagon.
Yeah, I just couldn't do the cars.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if you've heard this in previous episodes, Wook Jin, but you know, I'm half Korean and you're a full Korean.
I like to say I'm half. I'm technically adopted.
Oh.
So, yeah. So you're probably more Korean than I am.
Oh.
Ancestry.com, I'm sure would beg to differ, but I don't. Does it? I've never actually done that shit.
Me neither.
I have. I'm a lot of according
There's
to
always
it,
one.
Right? My mom is obsessed with it. So
Not like it changes.
Yeah, it doesn't
refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're still German.
Yeah. growing up, my dad was like, okay, you're a quarter German, you're an eighth French, you're this much Irish and Scottish, you're this much English, and then you have a little bit of Native American because your mom. And then like I do the Ancestry.com thing that actually analyzes your DNA, and I'm none of those.
So similar story, like, you know, my parents are not Korean, but we would do that like family background thing, you know, when you're growing up, and I'd be going in front of a class and be like, yeah, my family's like a quarter Dutch, a quarter Welsh, you know, a little bit of Swedish, and all the kids are like, what? Yeah. That's some bullshit.
It was always kind of like, I actually just did a panel at AwesomeCon talking about like my upbringing and that sort of thing, and it was always kind of weird because like they always know that you're not one of them. They're just like, you're just like not like, and you get that from the Asians too. They're like, well, you're like Asian, but you're not really, and it's like, but I am too. It's like, but I was wondering how that's kind of informed, like, because again, working on the regular show in Adventure Time, those are cartoons. Like they're not. There's no real cultural cachet applied to them because they've already been like rendered in an animated series. With Flavor, you're creating something wholly your own from the ground up.
Yes.
And there is kind of, again, there is that it's like a blended world. Like there's clear like Asian influence there's clear European influence. We've only read the first issue, but I was wondering, you know, did that kind of inform your approach as you were kind of blending cultures, blending cuisine?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a huge, like, we talk about Toonami and stuff. I grew up watching anime and reading manga, and then it wasn't until like college that a friend kind of opened up the world of, you know, European comics that I just didn't know about at all. But yeah, there's definitely influence there. Yeah.
Any specific anime or any specific European artist like Mobius or everybody just goes to Mobius, really. Like that's
actually, I didn't really like. I found out about him way late. I'm trying to remember what is it. Have y'all read like Last Man?
I've read Why the Last Man.
There's like this French trio that does like, you know, their own versions of like comics, but it's in that digest format. I think First Second puts it out, but it's really, I don't know, it's pretty incredible. Same kind of thing where they blend the European influences with, you know, Japanese influences as well. And in terms of anime or manga, like growing up, you know, Dragon Ball, I was a huge Ronin Warriors fan.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, yeah, all that stuff. Like pretty much just teams. Like anything with teams, like Power Rangers, like Outlaw Star, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Any Rurouni Kenshin or Trigun?
Yeah, I was a big Trigun fan. Rurouni Kenshin I didn't really ever get into. But yeah, Trigun, I was like, this is weird, but I like it.
Yeah. Why is that dude so tall, and why is his trench coat so wide? Like, it doesn't... Yeah, Vash the Stampede. But the... I am kind of, like... it always kind of interests me, because there's always, like... the Asian culture kind of calls to me. I've only been there... It's been decades since I've been there. But there's... I don't know if it's, like, something that I never really knew as much as like this more homogenized American culture, and I'm always interested how that like affects writing and art and that sort of thing. And so yeah, I was always when as soon as I like saw all that, I was curious, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely the influences, and I don't know. It's like I don't like it. It's like I'm not seeking this stuff out because it's from different places. It's more just like I see it and I'm like, oh, that's appealing, and I don't know why, so I'm just gonna keep looking at it.
How did this? You had met Joe like 6 or 7 years ago in like Seattle,
yep.
And you guys wanted, you know, how long has this kind of been kicking around, and where was this idea? It's like, hey, let's do a like a contest of champions, but the contest is food.
Yeah, Joe and I have known each other for a while. He was busy with other stuff, like he was doing Glory and then Shudder, and then Ringside, and I was still doing a lot of the license, like Adventure Time and regular show stuff. And then it was kind of like we knew we wanted to work together, but it was just timing, and then when it's right. And then he kind of had the idea thrown around. It's like he was looking for an artist, and then he was like, "Oh, dude, would you be down?" And then he kind of gave me the little scoop about it at first, and then I was totally on board. I think just because, again, it's like a challenge, something different and fun, and I think I was starting to I look back on the license stuff, and I had a good time, but I was ready to do creator own stuff.
Yeah. Jump into the wide world of Image, and yeah. I mean, for the listeners at home, this first issue, I mean, it sets up like an entirely kind of like new world. It's very, very accessible, but there's like this kind of like, and I also like how you guys put the credits, because without going into plot spoilers, you guys put the credits at the very end. I thought that was kind of like, this is all prologue. This is where it's about to all really kick into high gear.
Oh yeah, that's all Joe. I mean, it's interesting because it's like I'm fans of his other works, which is funny just because it's like, he's my friend. I'll get some of the stuff from him and we'll talk about it. And then when I read it in the script, I was like, oh, I haven't seen stuff like that. So yeah, it's always interesting.
Yeah, kind of like building the long game from jump, really.
Oh yeah.
So you had invoked this right before we jumped into the deep end. Speaking of deep ends, as you know, this is basically,
it's a front for a Death Wish RoboCop podcast. Everything else is a lie.
Jake, take it away.
Well, no, I like Sam said, we had discussed briefly beforehand. I wanted to talk about RoboCop because I have a similar RoboCop's been in my life since I was 5 years old.
He's wearing an Ed 209 hoodie.
Oh yeah, the blueprints of Ed 209. But no, I was curious about your relationship with old RoboCop, because it's funny because I don't know if it's just like the comics thing or what, but like so many people we have on always have a story to tell about RoboCop, and I always like hearing those. So regale us with your earliest memories of Alex Murphy.
Well, I just remember I grew up in South Carolina, and we grew up super Christian. So my parents were always like keeping an eye over, looking over my shoulder to see what comics I was looking at or what TV or movies. So they were pretty strict, and it was more like I would have to sneak over to my buddy Cliff's house because he had all the comics and all the R-rated movies. So we watched Aliens and Predator and RoboCop. But I just remember thinking oh, it's, I'm pulling a fast one on my parents, and getting so excited because it's you see the cover of RoboCop, you're like, what is that? As a kid,
sure,
and, it's just a dude with the Cyclops eye or whatnot. But I just remember getting freaked out so hard right at the beginning when it's he's getting blown away, and that dude is laughing. Yeah, it creeped me out. But then I think I heard y'all talk about it before, just how cartoony everything is in that movie, and it kind of makes it a little bit lighter, which I like. But yeah, that movie resonated with me for a very, very long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about that movie, and I think it was Red Letter Media that really pointed it out, was you have a guy getting eviscerated by Ed 209, and it's funny because it's just so over the top.
Yeah. And then it's punctuated.
And then a couple scenes later, basically the same thing happens to another person, and it's the most horrific, horrible thing. And of course, it's the hero it's happening to. But how many movies can you think of where something like that happens and it gives you the two opposite ends of the spectrum? The emotional spectrum. It's it's still such a unique movie. I mean, 31 years later, and I've talked about it a bunch too. Like that poster.
As you know.
Yeah. For all the poor listeners out there, like that poster was just designed to get your attention, and it worked. Because I don't know if you'd heard, like, the story I always have is like my mom is Christian and very goes to church every Sunday, all that kind of stuff, and she is very anti any kind of violence and anything, and same kind of thing. Like we had to lie and say we're playing Mario when we go to my friend's house and we play Mortal Kombat. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening. That's what happened at Andrew Kim's house all those years ago. But
still had trouble fighting Reptile.
Yeah, he was a piece of shit. No, I like Reptile. Reptile was cool. I hate now in like the modern games, like that he's just a fucking giant lizard man. Like I always liked when he was just the green version of Scorpion.
Yeah,
in
they
Sub-Zero.
called the palette swap.
Yeah.
What I thought was bullshit. Like, yeah, palette swaps like were kind of bullshit. I don't like in Mortal Kombat 3 where for some reason they just turn them all into robots.
Oh well, yeah, they have but then you get the Ultimate Edition because then you get them all back. But what the hell was I talking? Oh, RoboCop, of course. No, but like my mom, I try to like, I am convinced half of the story is fiction by now. I have like mythologized it in my own brain, but I do remember like my dad, he at the time when we watched this movie could care less about fucking pop culture. Like he's like, if it's not the New York Yankees, he doesn't care. And so, or Bruce Springsteen. And so like, and neither of those things, no, he's from Detroit, so I guess he would care a little bit from RoboCop. But they rented the movie for some reason, and I honestly think like the only thing I can think of is that my parents thought it was a cartoon because of the cover. Like they were like, this is some kids thing, RoboCop. It looks ridiculous. Thank God they didn't look at the back of the jacket because it's like, Clarence getting his head crushed. But like, they put it on. Somehow we got to the scene where Peter Weller's getting, just blown away, and my mom, of course, flipped shit and like paused it and was like, to my dad, like, Greg, get this off. I was throwing a huge fit because I was a little kid, because I didn't care about like plot. I didn't care about satire or even the violence. I just wanted to see RoboCop in action because it's still like the coolest looking thing, right? That giant suit. And so I remember throwing like a fit, and my mom kept saying like, put on the Ninja Turtles because like, the first one had been out. And I was like, I don't care about the Ninja Turtles. I've seen the Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? Like I've seen that all go down. Like I need to see what this is all about. My mom storms out of the room and is like, Greg, just fast forward to you see RoboCop and end this nightmare. And my dad's like, okay. And he fast forwards to the scene where he's in the shooting range in the police station. And they're all like, oh shit, look at this. And I look over at my dad has fallen asleep, and I watch the rest of the movie, and it was like, it blew my mind. It was like seeing the Beatles and the Ed Sullivan Show. If it was the most like ultra violent thing in the world, like it was like this life-changing thing. And even like years later, I watched it, and I remembered it being totally different because as like a 5-year-old, that was like the most violent thing you could think of. Like it was just so intense and crazy. But
yeah, for sure.
But and then also we were talking beforehand too. Speaking of ultra violence in movies, Death Wish.
Yeah. Those movies are, it's like, I correlate it with like, I mean, you could correlate it the same with RoboCop, or even Rocky movies where it's like the first one is like pretty fucked up and pretty dark. And then as they keep going in the sequels, it seems like they get more and more ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's like, have y'all watched all the Death Wish movies?
I was working my way through a marathon, and I couldn't quite finish all. I mean, I will eventually. I've never seen 4 and 5.
Yeah, I've only ever gone through the first 3.
Because the original trilogy.
Yeah. I'm an OG.
Yeah, I'm OG trilogy before Bronson became a 70-year-old.
I'm a true fan. No, I love the end of 3 because it's like a fucking co-op like shooter because his like detective friend teams up with him. They go through the streets, like an impossible number of gang members pop up on like out of like impossible places, and they just gun them down, and then they take out the final boss with a rocket launcher. So,
well, that's what I was gonna say. I think 3 is the one where it's like, oh, this is like Home Alone. Like he's protecting all of his old friends by like booby trapping their homes. right? Am I right on that one?
Yeah, yeah.
I think I am.
Yeah, before the
But then it
neighborhood
gets
takes it back.
more ridiculous. Like the fourth one, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's like, like he's dating a fashion designer, and now it's like Charles Bronson versus her ex-husband, and it feels like, okay, like you were protecting and being a vigilante in the first one, and now you're just like, I've got to protect the fashion show.
Oh man, yeah. Those, I mean, well, it's like the second one is such an insane thing where it's like you were saying, the first one takes itself as seriously as Death Wish can take itself, you know, and it's not. I mean, granted, yeah, you want to watch Charles Bronson shoot bad guys because like that's like Charles Bronson's thing. I don't know if you ever heard the story. I find the story is like such a Charles Bronson thing. It's on the IMDb trivia where like the director was like, "Hey, I got some projects lined up. One of them is about a guy, his like family's assaulted, and he goes out and he shoots muggers." And Charles Bronson goes, "I'd like to do that." And the director's like, "What, the movie?" And he goes, "No, shoot muggers," which is like such a Charles Bronson thing. But
So I got the part.
yeah, he's like, "You're in, man." But yeah, no, but like the second one's crazy because like his daughter survives the first one only to die horribly in the second one, and it's like it just keeps following. Like, and it's not even like, I mean, there's no good way to have like, you know, like to have his daughter die in the movie, but like she gets like captured and then killed, jumps out of a window and lands on a fence spike or whatever, and then is impaled. And I'm just like, Jesus
Which I'm pretty sure happens in like The Punisher.
Christ. Yeah, yeah. And then the Punisher also jumps off and like steps on the guy's head, but like that's what makes it the Punisher. But yeah, I mean
Just in case.
just in case. But yeah, the Death Wish movies are just freaking. I actually I read the first book, or I did Audible of like the original book because I've always heard the stories of like the Brian Garfield, the writer, was like, or the author was like pissed with even like the original movie because that first book is not pro vigilante. You know, like it's, if you ever read the book. And I think you'd be interested, you know, like especially with how much you enjoy the Death Wish movies, or if they've been a part of your life, like because it's such a different, like very early on, it's kind of similar, but you know, the one thing none of the Death Wish movies or Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, you know, or having Bruce Willis be the star of the new one, like they try their best to like be like, oh, this person has never fired a gun before or isn't a movie badass that we know, and sometimes they succeed in that, you know, like the scene when like. I think where it works with Charles Bronson is when he has the quarters and he's like flinging them around and like, you know, pukes after killing the first guy. Like, and then I saw the new one and like there's some moments where you know you almost believe that Bruce Willis hasn't killed anyone in a movie before. But like in the book, he's like an overweight, balding, like you know, guy. Like he and
Dennis Franz.
Yeah, it's like I would love for them to make that movie. You know what I mean? Like we keep joking, like Paul Giamatti. Like if you put him in that movie, because that's when the movie becomes a horror movie. Like you know, because then you don't believe this guy. Like this guy starts off as this kind of guy, and then he goes out and starts killing. So yeah, the book is about this like spiral that that Paul goes on, and it's really kind of like insane. And then he actually wrote a sequel after the first Charles Bronson movie came out called Death Sentence, which is a direct response to the movie, where there's a copycat vigilante. And
interesting. I didn't realize they were based off of books.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when the Eli Roth movie came out, like the big based on credit says the 1974 movie, and then there's a tiny little credit underneath that's based off the book. But yeah, I didn't know it was based off a book for the longest time, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta find this." And I'd be so curious to see, because I'd always heard that story that the author was like not happy with the, you know, and obviously the sequel just becomes, you know, a guy looking for ways to kill people.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, well, it's like always weird because it's like at the end of each movie, it's like somehow he knows the cops in each town or wherever he is, and at the end of every movie, they're like, "We'll give you a 10-minute head start, buddy." And he's like, and then he's like scuttling away, like smiling or something.
Yeah. Well, it's always like the cops are like, just send him to another state. You know, like that's literally like the end of the first one. They're like, just don't come back to New York.
Yeah, you've lost your New York privileges.
Yeah. Oh
Does
man.
the wink and the
Yeah, the little wink and the finger gun.
yeah. Because what he doesn't know, but we know, he does it like 4 more times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just getting started there, Charles Bronson.
This is going to overshadow everything else you've ever done.
Yeah.
The Great Escape.
Well, I always it's always curious because like the guy that kind of in a somewhat similar way has mirrored that career is Liam Neeson. Like like Liam Neeson gets the Taken franchise in like his late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, and he's like,
and he becomes an action star as a 50-year-old.
yeah, and he's like, guys know I was like Oscar Schindler.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but
also Darkman.
Wasn't he Darkman?
Yeah, Darkman. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great movie. It's funny because that's the movie that Sam Raimi's like, hey, I want to make a big time comic book movie, and they're like, fuck you, Sam Raimi, and he was like, all right, I'll make Darkman, and then of course years later he makes Spider-Man.
About a full decade.
Yeah,
or over. Yeah,
but yeah, it's just funny that like Liam Neeson, although Liam Neeson has like I guess been like, hey, I'm not gonna be doing this in my 70s. Like I'm done with these big time action movies.
Unlike the Stallone.
Yes, Stallone. Well, I don't know. Like he's still doing pull-ups with 100-pound weights hanging off his back, so he's doing. He still looks like he's in his early 50s. Yeah, I guess.
I want to be that jacked in my early 50s.
Yeah.
I want to be that jacked in my early 30s.
Yeah, I want to look like 71-year-old Stallone as a 31-year-old man.
Yeah,
that's all I ask.
I feel like I'm getting there.
To 71-year-old Stallone?
Yes.
Slowly but surely.
Day by day, really.
Yeah.
Day by day. So Wook Jin, as you may know, and this is for some the highlight of the entire episode. What are you currently geeking out over?
So I just read, somebody was telling me about a book and I started reading it called Golden Kamuy. Have you heard of that?
No.
I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember who the author is right now. But it's a manga that Viz puts out, and it's essentially like this immortal soldier who's trying to hunt people down because they have a treasure map tattooed on their backs. And it's like in Japan after like the Japanese-Russian wars. And it's cool. He's like teaming up with like a native person in the woods in Japan, and they're like hunting these fugitives down so he can like get money and take care of his like dead friend's family. I don't know if I'm really selling it, but it's a really good comic.
Cool. I mean, he is a Yakuza member with a heart of gold.
You can say that, sort of, yeah. But
you can say that. I don't know if it's true.
It's drawn crazy good. Like it's got like the action and the funny, and it's interesting. Also, I'm pumped because I'm super into wrestling, so WrestleMania is this weekend, and I'm pretty pumped about that.
Man, you're hitting all of our favorite stuff on this podcast.
I'm right there with you, brother.
Anyone you rooting for? AJ Styles, Seth Rollins?
I mean, I think that'll be the best match, like hands down.
AJ and Shinsuke?
I want Shinsuke to win, but I feel like it's not going to happen for whatever reason.
He doesn't have as good hair. I mean, yeah. AJ's got the best hair in the business.
He's got the L'Oreal hair, man.
Yeah, because he's worth it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He does. Okay, so this is the thing where it's like, every other dude with long hair, it's always like super wet.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, he's the dude with the dry hair out there. And if that was me, I'd be like pissed, and I have to like touch dudes with wet hair constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. Get him in a headlock and you're just like, eh.
They just slip right out of it like soap.
Yeah, or it's like, he's like, whatever, they're like powering up their move and like fling their head back and like getting hit with your hair goo. I'd be like, ew, that's disgusting.
Yeah, they should provide ponchos for the first
Splash
couple
zone.
roads like a Gallagher show.
Yeah, right? Or just like, I don't know. Like, I feel like you see those matches that go on, like in a Royal Rumble, where it's like somebody who comes out at the beginning has like they're known for having wet hair.
Yeah.
And it's like, do they just roll underneath the ring for a minute and like shoot it with a water bottle if they're in there the whole time to be like, all right, you know, it's not poofy.
How did Roman keep his hair so wet on the what was it? Which Rumble was that? Last year's Rumble where he was number 1 entrant?
Oh yeah.
I guess. Well, halfway through the match, they did cart him out. I guess he could have reapplied his conditioner
backstage.
there.
Spraying him with a water bottle.
Dunk his head in the sink one more time.
Yeah. It's so weird. But no, I hope Shinsuke wins, but I feel like AJ's gonna win.
It would be really cool to see Shinsuke win, but I agree, AJ's probably gonna win.
Yeah, I'm honestly like not super into most of the other matches on the main. I'm more pumped about the like takeover that's happening the day before.
Oh, that's gonna be so good.
Oh yeah, the talent down in that brand is pretty nuts right now.
I'm really excited for the North American ladder match.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was a thing until like yesterday or the day before.
I think they just announced it just last week. So
okay,
yeah,
it'll be cool. Ricochet and who else is in it? It's like
Ricochet, Velveteen Dream, EC3, I think Lars Sullivan's in it too. And there's like one other guy, Ism.
Who is Ism?
It's not Aleister Black, is it?
No, I think he's going for the title.
Yeah, no, he's going for the title. Yeah, the main title. He's not a mid-carder anymore.
No, his intro is so. I don't know. Yeah, it's nuts.
So good.
Ism is just like Triple H in a business suit. Is clearly Triple H and then like a domino mask.
He's like the American.
The Hulk Hogan,
Mr. America.
Yeah, who is Mr. America? It's clearly Hulk Hogan.
And one of the people they suggest is like Booker T, and it's like, but it's not. It can't. Okay.
I guess they have one thing in common.
Wait a minute, wrestling. What's going on here?
Who is Mr. America?
Did you ever see the clip of Sting and RoboCop back in WCW?
Oh yeah,
that's one of the. That's one of all-time greats.
Well, that's the thing. Like as a kid, I was more into WCW because I grew up in the South, so we watched that more because of Turner than WWF. And yeah, Sting was my jam. Vader was my jam. I don't know.
Well, I guess no. Taker is WWF, but yeah,
for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I followed WCW like hardcore when I was in middle school, and so I was obsessed with Rey Mysterio Jr. when he would dress up as like the Phantom and then Spider-Man, Diamond Dallas Page, and then Sting was the Crow. Like there was that like era where he was like silent for a year, just in the rafters. And my dad was like, "What are you guys watching?" And we're like, "No, this Sting might actually do something this week, Dad."
Nope.
Yeah, no, he's still in the rafters. Remember, there's that. It's like the greatest GIF of all time now, where they had like fake Sting. And so he would come out with the fake, the Sting mask out of the painted face. And so like it got to a point, I guess, where like it was like the Boy Who Cried Wolf. Like, oh, it's just fake Sting. And so out comes fake Sting, and he takes the mask off, and it's real Sting with his like painted. And they're like, oh shit! One of the all-time great moments in wrestling history is when I think Sting came from the rafters and beat down like every wrestler in the NWO with a baseball bat. Like he took on the entire thing by himself. That's one of the all-time great moments.
And then he joined the NWO.
That's right. Yeah. Then he became like the Joker in TNA.
Yeah, that was weird. And then it was like they had. Was that when there were like two of them? Because there was like the
they had
Wolfpack.
There was red and white.
Yeah, because he first had the white NWO shirt, and then he instantly turned on NWO and took off the shirt, and it was the Wolfpack shirt.
Yeah. And then they had the LWO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, I was all about WCW back in the day. Because I always thought like my favorite wrestling game of all time was WCW NWO Revenge
on the Nintendo 64.
Oh my god!
It's usually put up there on the pedestal as like the best of the wrestling
that is
games.
The fucking best.
The black
man.
cartridge, right?
No, the cartridge it was just gray that I had. But that was fucking awesome.
That's right. It was Turok 2, Seeds of Evil.
Yeah,
It
it's the
basically the
second
same
greatest
game.
wrestling game of all time. Yeah,
Rampage, sir.
Rampage. Well, okay. Here's a question, and feel free to chime in, Wook
Speaking
Jin.
of Rampage and wrestling.
Is literally anybody excited for the Rampage movie?
Whoa.
Oh, the Rock one?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll see anything with the Rock, but I wouldn't say I'm like,
Yeah,
I can't wait.
I was about to defend it, but then I was like, well, no, I'm not excited for it.
Yeah.
Nobody's like,
But I do. I want to see it.
I'll probably. Let's be honest. It's the show. We'll probably see
Yeah.
it.
I got Movie Pass. So I'm not wasting any money.
Well, when I saw the new Death Wish movie, they had the Rampage trailer and then the Skyscraper trailer or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
So 2 Rock trailers, back to back.
Skyscraper actually looks a lot more interesting than
I was like,
Rampage.
Jesus, man, this guy is everywhere.
Yeah.
Dude's nonstop.
Hopefully
I guess
he makes an appearance.
I don't
in WrestleMania.
understand like when they're making movies out of games that are like pretty two-dimensional. Like Rampage, like I played the game, but I was like, okay, it's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Or like when they made Battleship.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jake's favorite movie.
And
Yeah, I do own that film. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but yes, I do own that film.
But it's just always strange to me when it's like they take something that's like, okay, this is pretty simple, and they're like, what if we make it crazy? And
Yeah, what if Rihanna's
what's his
in
face? Jerry Bruckheimer does it.
it? Yeah.
I'm trying to think like what's the most. On the flight to Emerald City this past year or this year, it's still 2018. I watched Assassin's Creed on the way there because if there's any game that speaks to game to movie translation, it would be like Assassin's Creed. That thing's like fucking cinematic as it is. Kristen Bell shows up.
Really?
Yeah, she's like there in the
Wow.
first. Yeah, well, in the game, not the movie.
Oh.
okay.
That's
okay,
why it
yeah,
flopped.
yeah.
Yeah. And well, you get Marion Cotillard in
Oh,
the.
okay,
in the-
that's
in
good.
the- Okay, yeah, yeah.
That's good.
Le'Veon Rose, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Academy Award winner. But the a nominee. The it's terrible. It's fucking terrible. I immediately chased it with Steve Jobs so I could watch a good Fassbender film. But-
Oh man! Speaking of like the Steve Jobs kind of thing, I was rewatching like old movies on Prime, and it was like for some reason I watched Hackers, but after I watched Hackers, they were like, "Oh, you should watch this movie called Antitrust."
Oh, with Ryan Philippe.
Yeah. Oh man, that movie does not hold up.
No, I remember one of my buddies in high school had that, and I always thought it was like. I never actually like watched that film from top to bottom. I've seen parts of it, but I was like, oh, it's got Rachel Lee Cook and Ryan Philippe and Claire Forlani, and Tim Robbins is the bad guy. Gold.
Tim Robbins.
Yeah. Whatever happened to? He kind of like vanished.
I don't know. Yeah, I think he just disintegrated.
Went on. Went on a walkabout and
Yeah,
we never.
just never came home.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, Wook Jin, something you mentioned in our email chain, Gundam. What is your favorite?
Yeah.
What is your favorite Gundam?
Ooh,
Because we're a G Gundam school here.
that's tough. Yeah, I heard you guys talk about Master Asia before. I don't know.
Does
That's
that mean I
tough.
have
It's
to
like
put
G
the
Gundam
Master
was
Asia
so.
intro on this episode again?
Of course.
And I can't remember his name, but it's like visually just the look of the character. Like I really liked that German dude. He looked like a ninja for some reason.
Yeah.
Like his character looked cool, but I didn't like his Gundam. But my favorite was always like the one that was like shit. What do you call it? It was like a merman one. It was like a fish with arms and legs sticking out.
Oh.
Do you know the one I'm talking about? I can't remember what country it is.
Which? I can't remember either, but I know exactly what you're talking
Was
about.
it the Nordic one?
It might have been that.
Yeah.
Some of those were so bizarre. Like I liked how they had the animals, but then it was just like, oh well, this dude's a windmill.
Yeah, I was thinking of that one too.
The Dutch one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like But anything outside of G, like what's his name? Fucking the dude that is red. Not Amuro Ray. Char.
Yeah.
You're looking at me like I'm an aficionado. I have watched 1.5 Gundam series.
Oh, well, like OG.
I mean, I was super into just, Gundam Wing.
Mhm.
Just because it was on TV and like that movie was awesome. The Endless Waltz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just finished putting together a perfect grade Wing Zero model kit from Endless Waltz.
Oh, nice. Is that the one with like the angel wings?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
It was always weird to me that Linkin Park. I mean, it's not weird to me because it's fucking awesome. But Linkin Park, like starting with their remix album because they had a remix reanimation. They a lot of Gundam imagery.
Yeah. Because
Really?
Gundam's awesome.
Huh.
Yeah, like you look at their album art because the first album, Hybrid Theory, has like a military man carrying the flag, and then from then on, they're like, you know what? It's not a military man. It's going to be a Gundam.
on you.
Yeah, it's a Gundam every time.
I'm like, how did they not get in trouble with that? Or maybe they're just like, oh, we're cool with them.
I mean, I don't know how litigious the whatever fucking production house.
Let's put a Gundam on. Let's put a Gundam on our
I'll
logo.
just throw a Gundam on the covers now of Flavor in the background.
Okay.
I mean, there've been so many that you could probably just be like, what? It's just a giant robot.
Yeah.
It's not a Gundam.
Yeah. It's just a Zoid.
Yeah.
I have to ask, and you don't have to go into specifics. A simple yes or no, or maybe even a no comment if you don't. Is there a Master Asia equivalent in the Flavor tournament?
No comment.
Oh, that means no, and he's just pulling our legs.
No one that wants to.
Does Charles Bronson show up anywhere in the...
I feel like I could draw him in the background somewhere.
Oh, please, God, yes.
Just as like a like an old cat man or something.
Yeah, just give him the pencil thin mustache and have him say, no dice.
He has to do the finger gun and the wink.
Yeah, the finger gun and the wink, and he's like, Pally,
And
hey, Pally.
you should incorporate Robert Cop, my favorite bootleg
Oh yeah, I've seen
action
it, yeah.
figure.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Korean homemade wing commercial where RoboCop?
Chrome is shit in that, man.
Yeah, he emerges from a TV and gives this like Korean mom and her child like oven wings.
Mm-hmm.
What? That sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to. I'll have to look that up afterward.
I'll tweet you.
Oh man, that sounds good. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, before we let you go, anything else you'd like to plug?
No. There's stuff I'm working on, but I can't talk about yet. But yeah, I'm just pumped for Flavor. Joe and I have been working really hard on it, and Tamara as well. And Ariana, our letter is amazing. Yeah, I'm excited for it to finally come out because we've been, I don't know, we're pumped. I'm working on the 6th issue now. Oh, wow. So I'm planning to try and get like the 7th one done before it actually comes out. So it'll be cool. And I'll send y'all some of the other PDFs.
Cool, man. Yeah. It's crazy. Both you and the Scales and Scoundrels teams have like a trade's worth of material before the first issue even hits.
Yeah, I don't know how that worked out. I think it was just kind of like it kind of like the debut kept kind of moving. Mm-hmm. That's how it is. But also, I love that book, Scales and Scoundrels.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you, as a listener of the show, if you haven't heard both of the Seb Gurner appearances, we certainly go into Dragon Ball. His favorite fight is Goku Krellin from the second tournament because
yeah,
I kind of agree with him because at least from that tournament because that's the fight where Toriyama figures out like fight choreography.
Oh, for sure.
And then, like, the Tien Shinhan fight is also, like, fucking legendary that nobody talks about.
Yeah, Tien is, like, a super underrated character. I guess just because, like, when Z starts, everyone kind of forgets about him.
They forget about Yamcha. That's who they really forget. And Chaozu.
Yeah, I feel bad for all of them. They kind of got the shaft. I mean, Chaozu, I was like, he's a cute-looking character, and he's pretty baller, like, sacrificing himself to, like, try and kill Nappa.
Yeah. I love that in Dragon Ball Fighter Z, like Tien's super special is Chaozu committing suicide, and like Tien
Wow,
is,
that's
like that's what happens, and Tien's like visibly bummed. He's just like, no, like, yeah, it's so you too can defeat your enemy by having your best buddy blow himself up.
man, that's such a downer for a super.
The name of the move is Farewell, Mr. Tien.
Jesus.
Oh, that's good. I did listen before we go. I did listen. Y'all interviewed my buddy Rich from Atlanta. Like, I love that dude and his stuff.
I mean,
Tommaso.
Tommaso's been on the show 4 times. One more time,
Yeah.
and I'm not fooling. One more time, and he gets a prize.
He's such a good dude, and he's like, hands out, like he is. I know he's my friend, but I'm also like, he's my favorite cartoonist that's like working consistently. Like, his output's insane. Him as a person is like just the best, and it's like, oh man, it's good to see him getting that spotlight.
He's having a great year. I mean, you know, the Spy Seal came out in trade. He did the remaster of Clover Honey. He just launched Dry County in print. Yeah, he's having a good. He's working on other things we can't publicly discuss. He's having a great year.
Yeah, I'm ready for more Spy Seal. I love that comic.
Oh, me too, dude. Like that, just looking at like raw artwork from that, like seeing the pages come in, I was just like, oh, this just makes me happy.
Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So I guess check out Flavor on May 16th, and also check out Spy Seal, the Court and Steel Phoenix, available in comic book stores and book stores everywhere. Because more people need to read fucking Spy Seal, but and more people need to read Flavor, of course. But Wook-jin, thanks again for coming on the show, and thanks for listening and still then coming on the show.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast, and yeah, the episodes I've listened to, I was like, oh yeah, these dudes are hilarious. I'm gonna have a good time talking to them.
Oh, that like tickles me, man.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we kind of stumbled into comic press, and people seem to dig it. People seem to dig listening to us for reasons. Any no
RoboCop.
Okay, yeah.
Death Wish.
Sure. Yeah. Dragon Ball.
Gundam.
Yeah,
Dragon
Gundam.
Ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrestling.
There you go. Laserdisc.
Sting.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again, man, and you are welcome back anytime.
Sweet. Sounds good.
3, 2, 1. Oh, why do I have to do that again?
I don't know.
It's been a long day, guys. It's been a long day.
I can agree to that.
Lovely talk with all those gentlemen. Lovely talk. Small world that you got to walk down the aisle with one of them.
Yeah.
I'm so glad
yeah.
to understand now why Nuggets are the best.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that episode has my favorite Chris.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
About
Yes.
the Turkish delights.
Yes.
Yes. You all just heard it though. So.
Yeah.
They're still holding in their sides
Yes.
from laughing.
Just aching.
And by walking down the aisle with him, we were.
You were wed.
No, good friend of the show, best friend of the show, Corey. During Corey's wedding, we were both part of the wedding party. So yes, a very small world.
Very, very. So you gents, get into anything.
Well, we promised in our world famous last episode we would talk about A Quiet Place. It was great. We're keeping silent.
I agree.
Well,
Sorry,
no.
I'm opening up a wrapper, and I
That's
don't
okay,
want
it's
to be
okay.
rude. I wanted
No.
to get the microphone.
Yeah, it's okay.
I wanted to get the microphone as far away from the rapper as possible.
I'll wax poetic for a second then about it.
It's what you do best.
We're gonna go into spoilers. So from here on out, we're going to spoilers.
Hit me.
The cold open of this movie is one of the best cold opens in recent memory. And it's kind of great because it's horrible for the characters, but it sets up pretty much the backbone of the rest of the movie. And for what the big payoff at the end, dealing with his family. Obviously, you can't make a sound. You make a sound, these monsters come pretty quick and pretty much no remorse about it. And they lose a child in the beginning.
Which any movie that like dares to like kill off a kid, especially that early, always like gets like a
well, it's
from me.
so fucking nuts because okay, the beginning is like they're in like a general store, right? And they're picking up supplies. And yeah, very good. Yeah. And there's the youngest kid really wants this spaceship toy. And there's a couple close calls where it almost falls, and the sister, deaf actress, which adds a whole new layer to it as well, because they were her point of view with everything silent. So like there's stuff happening behind her, and she can't even hear when stuff's going on, and it brings this whole sense of dread to it. Like
it's a real wait until dark situation.
Oh man, it's nuts. Anyway, she catches this spaceship before it hits the ground, and John Krasinski, the wonderful, wonderful John Krasinski. Everyone in this movie is wonderful.
Yeah,
but
friend of the show, John.
Yeah, I wish, man.
Co-host of Laserdisc.
Yeah. I mean, I'd almost be a Red Sox. If he told me to be a Red Sox fan, I'd be a Red Sox fan. That's how much I love John Krasinski.
You hear that, Josh? Just get John Krasinski.
But he co-wrote and then directed this movie. He has to break the kid's heart and be like, look, and it's like day 82, I think, Chris, in the beginning. Like it says, it's
yeah,
like, so it's still
80-ish.
fairly new.
Yeah.
So he has to kind of break this kid's heart. Like, you can't have this toy. I'm sorry. And then they're going to leave, and the daughter gives him, without the batteries in it, the toy. Like, here, take it. There's no batteries. You're fine. But then the kid is last in line. He grabs the batteries, and now we know. So now it's a ticking time bomb. We're waiting for it to go off. We just don't know when. And again, hasn't been any noise yet in this entire movie. So
yeah, little scuffs here and there, but
on sand,
nothing,
like with their bare feet,
little ambient noise.
Yeah, and so they had this great shot where like John Krasinski's on point for many reasons because he's the man, but like he's the front of the line, and they're following this trail back to their house, and it's like John Krasinski, wife in the film, and of course real life wife Emily Blunt, their oldest boy, oldest girl, and then the youngest kid. And they're walking, and you're kind of getting a sense of this world. And all of a sudden, out of fucking nowhere, the spaceship goes off. And it is deafening, man. Like, it sends it down to your core. And the look on John Krasinski's face of, like, the hopelessness that's about to happen. And then Emily Blunt is just devastated. And the moment that sells, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, is John Krasinski's running. And he reaches out and jumps right as the kid's taken. And it cuts to black. Quiet Place, and you're like, "What?
Yeah.
This is my favorite movie of the year." Like, I dare another movie right now to be to knock this off the top spot, because that means there's a movie better than The Quiet Place this year, and that's gonna blow my freaking mind. Because I mean, and then the whole rest of it. I mean, there's a scene with
jumps ahead
like
a whole year,
like 400 and something days, and there's a scene involving a nail in the foot that, and again, it's so genius. They set that up like 10
minutes earlier too.
And then it's coming, and Emily Blunt her water's broke, and she's by herself in the house. She steps in the nail, so now she's got her foot in a nail. She's having contractions.
She is a badass pregnant woman.
And did you like the end of the movie? Because I feel like some people didn't like it because it's one of those like, I thought it was awesome.
We kind of got into, Chris and I was present as Chris kind of got into this debate at a bar last night about the movie, if you recall. I know it was being your birthday and being the amount of
well, I happened to catch like the tail end of it, and I was like, "Oh, you guys talk about A Quiet Place?" Yeah, I was surprised that they kept the baby. Like, that was really all like the contribution that I had to
Robin
it.
was wondering about the feedback. Like,
was she? Oh, okay.
Why
I
wouldn't
completely
aliens
missed
know
that.
about the feedback?
I don't know. Why didn't the aliens and signs know that the entire planet is made up of water?
I mean, they could have known about.
Signs sucks.
They could have. That was Chris Nolan, not Jake Bozick, who said that. I mean, they could have known about feedback, but it's not going to stop feedback from happening. So the end of the movie I thought was fucking dope, because first of all, the moment that'll shred your heart into a million pieces and make you roll some tears is they set this whole thing up about the daughter thinks that John Krasinski hates her because of the loss of their youngest child.
Because she blames herself for giving the kid the toy.
And there's a really sweet moment where she goes and puts the toy down at his
his grave
memorial marker.
Yeah.
And she still has that toy. She still has it's broken, the spaceship. So there's another great moment, father and son moment, where they go to a waterfall and they're fishing, and they talk about how if there's one sound louder than the sound you're making, you're safe. And so they have
especially like an ambient sound, like water.
Yeah, and so they're under the waterfall, and John Krasinski he yells, like just screams, and the kid is like, whoa, like he's freaked out. And John Krasinski explains to him the first time you hear actual audible dialogue in the movie, and he's saying, and it's kind of sweet, British
above
sweet,
a whisper, because every once in a while they're whispering
exactly, because it's all sign language up to this point. And John Krasinski has a conversation with his son out loud for the first time in over a year. He gets to talk to his boy, and his son is like, do you hate? It's all I can't remember their name. I can't remember all their names, but like, do you hate the daughter? Do you hate her for what happened? And he's like, no, of course not. And he's like, well, you should tell her that, because she beats herself up every single day. And so it all pays off in this like totally heartbreaking moment in the end, where John Krasinski has like an axe, and he gets wrecked by one of these monsters early on. And then the kids, it's kind of like a Jurassic Park moment. They're in a truck, and it's going nuts on this truck. And John Krasinski like uses the axe to stand up as a crutch. He's all busted up, and he signs "I love you" to his daughter. And then he says, I always loved you. And then he lets out this primal scream that attracts the beast to kill him and save his kids. And it's like, it's out of control, man. Like
that's where I'm getting goosebumps. You retelling that bit.
Yeah, same. I mean, and there won't be a dry eye in the house, because it's so emotional, man. And then another big payoff is that early on, again, everything's set up so well in this movie. He gives her, he's working on a new hearing aid, and his daughter wants nothing to do with it, because she's like, it never works, Dad. Like, it never works. Every time we try this, it's another failure, and then I'm still, it's not helping me. And so he's like, just please try it. And of course it doesn't work. But then it turns out to be this kind of weapon that has this feedback against these monsters.
One could call it a Chekhov's gun.
You could. But the great thing too, another moment that really got me deep, was she discovers the dad's workbench, and she discovers how much research and how many times he's been working on these hearing aids. And there's a great moment where the actress, like, she has the hearing aids in her hand, and she's just like devastated, because she never knew. It's so awesome. And then they discover the weakness with the feedback, and Emily Blunt blows one of the heads off. I love the ending, because then they all start coming running towards his house, and the daughter puts the
raises the volume all the way up,
volume on the hearing aid, and then, or on the PA system, sticks the hearing aid on it with like a grin.
Smash cut to black.
And then you get Emily Blunt
cocks
the shotgun with a smile on her face, and it cuts to black. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. This movie. Oh, this movie. Yeah. It's so good, man.
Yeah.
I loved every second of it, and it's just great. It's just high praise. So unfortunately, if you listen to that entire thing, I had the entire thing spoiled, still go see it, because it's way better than me explaining it.
Yeah.
Actually seeing it on the screen.
They really do like some masterful storytelling in this.
And which
Jake is not lying when he says they set everything up really well.
Yeah. And the sound, like I said, the lack of sound.
The one complaint that I have with the movie, since you brought up the lack of sound, is that the movie itself does have a musical score to it. And I think that's a waste of an amazing little motif, if I can get a little artsy fartsy with it, because I think since there's such a emphasis put on being silent, being stealthy, I feel like a great way to take the audience with the characters on that journey would be to have you only hearing what they can hear.
Yeah.
And then, like, that would have made that moment where John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's characters share that little, like, dance that much more impactful, because you would hear the music that they have playing on the iPod.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, because they kind of do play with that, because, like, when she just has the earbud out, you can kind of hear it, like, all tinny and stuff like that. And then she puts it in Krasinski's ear, and it, like, comes in full, it swells. And, like, if that had been the only time you hear music in the movie, imagine the art boner that I would have had.
You ruined this movie for me.
Right? I know.
Boner.
No, I hate it. But also, you know what, too? Like, this movie easily could have been jump scare the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not that at all. Now, granted, like, when shit goes like you react because the sound is so loud, and it's a perfect
because you're acclimated to a quieter
a quiet place. And it's but it works because like again you're dealing with the sound and the silence, and it's not like how can we just scare you every second, like as we've said a million times, like, everything's set up so well, like the little when they play Monopoly with little like felt pieces, you know, it's so good. It's so good. That's all I gotta say.
Good.
It was very good.
Good. Now, Chris, you saw a second película.
Sure. Yes. For my birthday, because my birthday was yesterday, as of the date of recording. Friend of the show and co-host of Video Game Archives, Zach, took me out to see a movie for my birthday, and I gave him 3 options. What did I give him? I said the Truth or Dare, Blockers, or Rampage. And
I've heard Blockers is great.
I've heard Blockers is great as well. Spoilers, it wasn't Blockers. He responded with the only one of those 3 I want to see is Rampage. And I was like, cool, I really want to see that. So yeah, we went and saw Rampage, and I got to say, I was expecting to be entertained by the movie because it's got The Rock and it's got monsters. But I was really surprised at how like fun the movie ended up being. Like it wasn't just like, oh cool, giant monsters and The Rock being The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson. But like it was like legit, like it over delivered on what my expectations were for a monster movie.
Directed by the same guy that directed San Andreas.
Oh,
I can,
shit.
you know what? I can totally see that. That would explain why The Rock has like a gratuitous helicopter scene, or rather
These helicopter trilogies.
or rather, how like the one comment that I made while I was watching it with Zach was like, how does The Rock keep finding helicopters? Because like whenever he needs like transportation or a big gun, like he just looks to the left and there's a helicopter waiting to be used by him. Like, it's just like a cherry in Pac-Man.
Was this the first movie you saw after A Quiet Place? Like,
yes.
Was it just even louder? Because that movie had to be the opposite of A Quiet Place.
It literally was.
Just bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, it was just crashing and explosions all over the place. It was a whole bucket of fun. While we were coming out, one of my friends, asked me how it was, and like I described it as like it was just a great dumb action popcorn flick.
Awesome.
And that's all it needed to be. That's all I expected it to be. That's all I wanted it to be.
Well, I really loved San Andreas.
Yeah, no, I think it's right within that San Andreas wheelhouse. Like if San Andreas had a giant wolf, lizard, and gorilla, it's the same movie.
Gotcha.
That's what it needed.
Yeah. Minus Daddario, so sorry about that.
That's what Rampage needs.
That's a ding.
Yeah.
That's a ding.
I loved another thing that I loved about it was the villains, the antagonists. Just like their set must have been covered in barbecue sauce and Chick-fil-A sauce because they were chewing the scenery like it was going out of style. To the point where one dude, and like not a knock on him because I thought that it worked really well for the movie, but like I feel like he's more of a novice actor because he was still in that stage where he needs to be holding something all the time. Like he needs a safety prop.
Idle hands.
Yeah. So they literally just, almost every scene he's in, he has some food that he's eating.
It's the Brad Pitt scenario.
Yeah, so he's literally chewing. Just not the scenery, but props. He has a Pop-Tart, and then like the next scene, which could have...
What kind of Pop-Tart?
I didn't notice.
Frosted or unfrosted?
Frosted. Like it was definitely like...
Unfrosted is a living hell. What is...
That's just toaster strudel.
Ooh. Oh, I felt that in my soul.
Gonads.
God. Right in the gonad.
That's not your soul?
Yes.
But yeah. And then and Zach, he's the co-host of a video game podcast. He's a little bit more in touch with the video game stuff. He was like there was so many little minute
That's cool.
references to the games,
Because I remember playing it. It was fun.
as well as literal arcade cabinets of the first 2 Rampage games,
Oh, really?
in the background of a scene.
When I went to, that's got to be weird. So, arcades of the game that the movie's based off of are in the movie.
Yes.
Just like Double Dragon has a Double Dragon cabinet in Double Dragon the movie.
Yes.
Just like the Beastie Boys being a thing in the Star Trek universe, and the Beastie Boys reference Mr. Spock.
Yes.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I did not figure that out. Someone else did on the internet.
Full circle moments.
Yeah.
Full circle
Yeah.
moments.
Mhm.
The last time I was at Firefly Music Festival, they have a free arcade tent, and one of the free arcade games you can play is Rampage. I love Rampage. It was always an intriguing game growing up. I was always the wolf because there's King Kong and Godzilla, which is to say George and Lizzie. But why is there a giant wolf? So I was like, I wanted this one.
Surprisingly, you would think
This.
I would be the wolf because I love werewolf
Yeah.
things, but I was always the lizard.
Same. I was always the lizard.
Yeah. The but
Mostly because I loved Reptile from Mortal Kombat. So I was like, oh, there you go.
perfect
Synergy.
How about this? But I love that game, but by about 30 minutes in, you're like, oh, this is just the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I haven't played it in a long time.
Yeah. John, nondescript John has Rampage.
Oh,
Rampage World Tour?
He does on the 64.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a winner.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah,
Nice.
Very good.
so cool.
But yeah, so I highly recommend also checking out Rampage. Quiet Place for its acumen in the art of filmmaking, and Rampage for its dumb fun. And I think that this is a dumb fun that everyone can agree with, not a dumb fun that I love but everyone else hates.
Here's a question.
Yes.
So you saw San Andreas, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So where does it fall out of the last couple rock movies?
The Rock Pantheon.
Because there's San Andreas, Central Intelligence, Baywatch, which I love. The Rock. That movie was not good. And then sorry, Rock, sorry, Dwayne. I'm sorry.
He's gonna come kick
Sorry,
your
no,
ass.
please.
The Fast and the Furious movies. Did we say that already?
Well, what's the one?
More
the latter.
ensembles.
Yeah, what's the one I'm thinking of? The
Fate of the
then
Furious is
Jumanji.
Jumanji.
Yeah. Where does it kind of fall in those?
With a perfect woman.
Yeah, with the Darius
Jack
and San
Black.
Andreas.
I'd say better than Central Intelligence, better than Baywatch. Even though I loved it, I can admit that it's not a great movie.
The Rock was not what was wrong with that movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was Pamela Anderson, and David Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
I'd say it's right up there with San Andreas. Based on its performance in the box office, maybe a little bit under Jumanji.
Okay.
But time will tell on that one.
Gotcha.
I could see Rampage ultimately doing better than Jumanji, just because it's a more of a closer to summer release, and people are more likely to go to some big monster movie in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Jumanji's been kicking ass.
Yeah, seriously.
So I would not be surprised if Jumanji ended up still being the more profitable rock movie this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to top Jumanji. I mean, that movie was nuts.
Especially overseas.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, it has ousted Titanic as the number 3 highest grossing movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was Jumanji. Something just ousted Titanic.
Black Panther.
Was it Black? Sorry, my bad. Jumanji's still kicking ass though, so
Yes.
I got my wires crossed. That's right. Black Panther's been also killing it, killing it more, obviously.
Killing in the name of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the name of.
Dun.
Bob.
Bum, bum,
Do you do anything?
bum, bum.
You mentioned your birthday. Did you do anything other than going to the movies? Did you do anything for your birthday?
On the actual day of my birthday, I hosted trivia like I usually do because it was a Tuesday. I hosted trivia at my bar and made it all about me. Normally it's 15 questions and then yeah, it's 15 questions and then on the back I have like a hey, here's some pictures, I don't know, tell me what movie this scene's from or something along those lines. So I made it 15 multiple choice questions about me. And then on the back I had several school photos. And I was like, how old was I in these photos? So that was fun. There were 2 teams that featured long-term friends, and neither of those teams won. It was a team of regulars that I guess have gotten me to spill details about my life that I thought were quiz-worthy, and they were good at retaining that knowledge. I mean, to be fair, a good chunk of the questions were like, hey, I like pro wrestling. Where was WrestleMania this year?
We missed one multiple choice question. Other than that side would have been perfect.
Yeah, and I totally understand the age one was pretty hard because one, it's hard to tell people's ages, and two, I feel like a lot of or like half of them people got really thrown off because they were like, oh well, look at how big he is. This is totally like in high school. Joke's on you. I never had a growth spurt. I've always been huge. So those were still elementary school pictures.
Fuckers.
Yeah. I just had a big gap. So like I had pictures of me from like 5th grade, 6th grade, or like kindergarten, 1st grade, and then it jumped to 5th grade, 6th grade, but like that's still all elementary school. Boom. But yeah, and then there was an adorable picture of me like on day 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, you got a Back to the Future cake.
I did. It was awesome. Yes, friend of the show and co-host of Laserdicks, Ken's sister Joy, who was also one of Josh's hosts on Reminiscent Evil, the best named podcast of all time. All these titles that you have to remember. She decided that she was going to make me a cake along with our mutual friend Robin. They were, making me a cake for my birthday, and they were like, "What should we do? What should we do? We want it to be, some nerdy reference to me because I'm a nerd." What? Yeah, I know, right? I co-host a show called Geek Out.
That's why you're a geek, not a nerd. Jesus,
that's his line.
I mean, truth be told, they're interchangeable as far as I care. But I can feel the angry tweets coming in. Direct them to the E.G. Nolan, and I will tell you why it doesn't matter.
He'll mute you.
Probably.
So you'll still scream into the ether, and he'll just not know.
Yeah. But yeah, so they were like, we need to make a cake. What should we do? And Ken, being my half-sized twin, was like, well, he really likes Back to the Future. And they were like, haha, perfect. We'll make him the Jailbird Joey cake. So yes, they presented me with a cake that said "Happy Birthday, Uncle Joey," and it had the Jailbird drawing on it. And I was like, yes, this is the greatest cake I've ever gotten.
Very screen accurate.
Yes,
too.
Yeah, no. Joy told me that they literally paused the movie while they were drawing it, and I assume they were using Ken's Blu-ray of it. Or Laserdisc, who knows? The picture quality is pretty good on that Laserdisc.
Get it crisp.
Jake, what did you do for my birthday?
I worked.
Woo! But you did come in today and gave me the wonderful Lethal Weapon line.
There's only one way to wish someone a happy birthday, and it's to do it the day after with Happy Birthday for Yesterday.
Not the Jeff Goldblum, it's my birthday.
I mean, that's a good one. That's a good one.
The entire day I was like... actually, the entire day before, I was like, I need to get that GIF so I can post it on all my social media. And unfortunately, there's no close up of Jeff Goldblum just kind of going, "It's my birthday."
And it's so
and I was
quick
like,
too.
Yeah,
like the sound carries over, but like the actual visual on the ship is like.
So I was like, I can't. My birthday's ruined.
Damn you, Goldblum.
Yeah.
Damn you. Yeah.
Sam, you get into anything this week?
I played a lot of video games. I had some people over, and we played some video games, and John won.
I saw that, and I was like, no surprise.
Yeah, that was an Instagram story of John getting a literal trophy for kicking the shit out of us, and I beat him in Perfect Dark.
Oh.
But he won at everything else because he's just the best. He's the best
around.
No one ever got it. No, I got him down in Perfect Dark, but that only a paltry Pyrrhic victory for he won the war. That's probably the most notable thing I've done since last week. Yeah. I love how in our interview we, especially the Joe one with Joe and Allie, we should be like sponsored by Paddington 2 because we bring up that movie, available on digital HD and Blu-ray everywhere.
Don't buy it until we're sponsored.
Yeah.
Tweet at them, be like, hey, I wish I could buy it.
Hey, Studio Canal, you got the email. I love your film. Let me sponsor. Let me plug the shit out of it. But no, seriously, thanks to Joe and Allie and Woojin for coming on.
Yes.
Their book's out on May 16th. Definitely check it out. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake. Thank you very much.
It's my birthday.
Good night, Eric Bana. This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.